Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Fired after teaching what he's taught for 20 years. Last fall, a biology professor told his class that a person's sex is determined by X and Y chromosomes.
Well, after several students filed complaints, he was let go. His termination letter accused him of religious preaching. CBN's Billy Hallowell talked with the professor about how he's fighting back.
As a biology professor for the past 20 years, Dr. Johnson Varkey consistently taught the same scientific facts about the human reproductive system without any problems. But he says that recently changed when he received a notice of dismissal.
I was surprised and I was shocked because, I would never expected for such a letter from or such an email from the school, because I've been teaching that for that school for the last 20 years and without any complaints.
Dr. Varkey believes his lessons on human biology and sex being determined by chromosomes X and Y sparked complaints which led to his dismissal.
On the 12th of January, I received an email from the vice president of the school that they are doing an ethic violation investigation on me. 2 weeks after the first email, I received another email with a letter of termination.
Dr. Varkey says although he asked about complaints, he received no response from HR and didn't get a chance to defend himself before his firing.
When I got the letter of termination, what the VP mentioned was that some of the complaints were offensive to the homosexuals and transgender. So I presume and I assume that very possible it is based on human reproductive system, which I taught in November. When I taught this class, 4 of my students just walked out.
First Liberty attorney Keisha Russell believes Dr. Varkey's case likely has much to do with current cultural trends.
When I saw the termination letter and I see that the university is accusing him of religious preaching, I think that what they don't understand is even if he was, they still can't fire him for saying something that he believes to be true.
Russell says her client's speech was based on his sincerely held beliefs and ethical integrity and is protected under the First Amendment. Furthermore, she believes Dr. Varkey's views on biology and other related issues are backed by science.
We just think it's a shame that they would fire one of their long-term professors for teaching what he's always taught.
A representative for the Alamo College's district told CBN News it does not comment on personnel matters or pending or threatened litigation. As for Varkey, he's hoping to successfully convince St. Philip's College to overturn his dismissal.
Dr. Varkey obviously wants to be reinstated, and he wants his job back and his record cleared because he didn't do anything wrong.
Russell believes the college violated Dr. Varkey's First Amendment rights, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the Texas Religious Freedom Restoration Act. I'm Billy Hallowell, CBN News.
Well, the irony here is St. Philip's College is discharging a professor for, quote, preaching, close quote, and they're named after Philip the Evangelist. This doesn't make any sense, and it just shows that our woke culture, our cancel culture, is completely out of control. When you come and tell a professor what they've taught and science, medical science backs up, is no longer acceptable, and you will be discharged for both teaching science and then any kind of expression of religious ideas. Well, that's clearly not legal, and I expect there to be litigation. In other news, from floods to landslides to sweltering heat, extreme weather is devastating parts of the country. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. Intense rain and flooding covered Vermont's capital city, while shifting ground is slowly swallowing a California neighborhood, and record high temperatures continue to bake the Southwest. CBN's Wendy Griffith reports.
President Joe Biden has declared a state of emergency in Vermont, where torrential rainfall triggered historic and catastrophic flooding, the worst in nearly 100 years, and more wet weather is on the way. In Montpelier, the state capital, cars floated down streets. Homes and businesses like Andrew Mullins washed out after the area was pounded with at least 8 inches of rain.
There's about 7 feet of water inside Sam's, to the point that you can barely see the ice machine flipped over just from the power of the water coming through.
Vermont's Winooski River cresting at just over 21 feet, the highest since 1927. The rain also washing away the earth underneath this railroad track. Paula Schwartz and her family fled their home in Ludlow, her neighbor taking a kayak to check on it for them.
My next door neighbor, they're in the house and they can't get out.
Crews rescued more than 100 people, taking them to dry land.
In many areas, the water conditions remain too dangerous for rescue by boat.
On the other side of the country, a stunning scene in California's Los Angeles County. A major landslide, at least 12 homes already destroyed or condemned, many falling, collapsing into a ravine. They're now watching at least 16 more homes in Rolling Hills Estates after the ground started shifting Saturday, moving 20 feet in 24 hours.
And today you can hear the creaking, the cracking, the crumbling, and they're going to fall.
Meanwhile, 65 million people from Florida to California are under heat alerts. Phoenix is expecting the 13th consecutive day of temperatures of 110 degrees or higher. Most of California is seeing temperatures more than 15 degrees above normal. Meteorologists predict the heat wave will reach record highs across 10 states later this week and into the weekend. The Northeast bracing for more rain by Thursday and Friday. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Thank you, Wendy. Turning now overseas, where the NATO summit is wrapping up in Lithuania. President Joe Biden meets with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky today after Mr. Biden and NATO leaders made it clear that Ukraine cannot join NATO while it's still at war with Russia. They did pledge to make it easier for Ukraine to join in the future, but did not give specifics. Zelensky responded with strong criticism, saying, quote, "It's unprecedented and absurd that the alliance does not have a timeline for Ukraine's membership." Well, now to another global hotspot. In the Asia-Pacific, there are rising tensions over a possible Chinese invasion of Taiwan, leading to Japan's building up of its armed forces in the region. CBN's Chuck Holton has this report from a Japanese island with an uncertain future.
Japanese and American troops are preparing for possible military action. These joint exercises, which took place in June, are the largest held on Japanese soil since World War II. Increasing threats from China have the entire Pacific Rim worried the Red Army could soon move on Taiwan, less than 140 miles from Japan's shores. In the same area, Chinese Coast Guard ships have been encroaching on Japanese waters almost weekly. As a counter, U.S., Japanese, and Philippine Coast Guard ships also held maneuvers in June. Ishigaki Island, a popular Japanese tourist destination, could soon become a battleground.
This year will be the biggest year for tourists here on Ishigaki Island that they've seen since COVID. And that's a really good thing for the economy of the island. But what the people that live here are most worried about is an influx of another kind of people caused by an attack on Taiwan.
We are concerned about an influx of refugees in the event of an attack, because we are the closest island to Taiwan. This is an example of China trying to change the status quo by force.
To counter the threat, more soldiers are being moved to bases in the south of Japan.
This new military base just opened here on Ishigaki Island. It's one of the closest ones to the Chinese coast and to Taiwan. It's one of 4 bases that's been built recently to counter the threat from China. This one will be home to more than 500 troops. Most of the people on this island are very pro-military and very happy to have this here, but some people are not, and it's not so much the base itself, it's the kind of troops that they plan to station here.
Locals have been staging protests here because they fear the presence of Japanese artillery batteries would only make the island a target.
Some say it will increase tensions, but I believe it is necessary to strengthen our defenses.
This former Japanese general agrees.
If Taiwan is annexed, the Chinese army will be stationed there, and we could lose control of the sea lanes that provide 60% of Japan's energy and 40% of its food. So there is already an emergency in Taiwan, and an emergency in Taiwan is an emergency in Japan.
But that doesn't mean Japan is looking for a fight.
So Japan, it seemed to be building up more troops or military. But if you were to ask any of those people visiting Yasukuni Shrine and came here to pray for the warriors, their minds, they don't think about war. Like if you ask, what do you think about war? Almost all of the people would say, no way. So it's not like, oh, we wanted to fight. No, we want peace. So we want to pay respect and peace. So we come here to wanting for peace.
No matter how likely there is to be a war, our job is to stop it. To ensure China's president doesn't miscalculate like Putin did. The point is that if China invades Taiwan, the United States and Japan will have the ability to counter that together.
Chuck Holton, CBN News, Tokyo.
Thanks, Chuck Gordon. It's pretty significant to see Japan's pacifist posture change to this buildup in the region.
It used to be part of their constitution that they were pacifist, and that was all as a result of what was called Imperial Japan and their expansion into Korea, the war with China. All of that is less than 100 years ago. And you look at it and go, boy, things have really changed. You start seeing Japan militarize. They're doing it in response to Chinese aggression, which has been unprecedented. You know, the number of air raids, the number of ships that are trying to block shipping lanes, all of this is happening at the same time because President Xi in China wants to annex Taiwan. And they, instead of doing it peacefully, instead of honoring two systems, one country, what the great promise was for Hong Kong, all of that is gone, and Taiwan has no hope that they would be able to keep their democracy under Chinese rule. So we're looking at war, and we have to make sure that they know, China knows, don't miscalculate like Putin did in Ukraine. This isn't something that is going to go down easy. Japan will come to the rescue of Taiwan. And the United States, our president has said, yes, we've signed an agreement with Japan where we can base Marines in the islands and base artillery there. And that is what we're seeing played out. This was all signed a year ago, and now we're seeing the exercises. Now we're seeing the equipment being delivered. I hope China gets the message, and I hope they stand down and say, there's another way here. You can have peace with Taiwan, joint systems, and get along.